Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci of Candid Frank Live. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google, Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now, joining me as usual is Aaron William Freeland. Hi, Aaron. How's it going?
Good, Frank. How are you today?
I'm okay. I'm okay. No point complaining. Nobody's going to listen anyway. So, real quick, a couple of CFL notes. Bombers add Jason Hogan.
Yep, this is a good signing for them. It's good to see him finally picking up in a coaching role. I always said had a bit of a future there.
Cat sign an American.
Yeah, so that's defensive lineman Trey Crawford has been picked up by the Ticats. He most recently spent time with the Denver Broncos after originally signing with the Falcons as an undrafted free agent. So that's a big pickup for them. He's 6'3", 235 pounds.
And the Boatman Inc. American wide receiver A.J. Richardson.
This was actually a nice pickup to see. I'm glad that they actually managed to pick him up. So, looking forward to the opening kickoff this season as well.
And then U of T, Toronto in particular, is the home of the Combine that's happening this weekend. The best young players in the country up for the draft.
A lot of exciting stuff coming out of that, a lot of exciting pictures, and a lot of exciting stories. So
you can all check it out. It's downtown, U of T, the bubble, and the hotel down there. Geez, you know what? I forgot the name of the hotel. Doesn't matter. Right? You can figure it out. Just Google CFL.ca and away you go, and you'll get all the information you need. And you might be able to see some interviews with some players that might be on a team near you. Let's talk about hockey, and we'll go to the Maple Leafs, who can't score a power play goal, but neither can the opposition. In fact, they allow two shorthanded goals.
Yeah, the Leafs seem to be having some issues with that sort of thing recently. What used to be their saving grace has turned out to be a bit of an Achilles heel. But by the same token, on the other end of it, they're just as happy if their opponents take penalties these days because that gives them the opportunity. They actually managed to get two against the New Jersey Devils, and I think that was actually the difference maker right there. So.
That's when it becomes very clear. One of the assets of the Leafs is their speed. And their speed outside of the big four, because really, Marner's fast, Nylander's fast. I know that Austin Matthews for a big man goes very quick, and we don't need to talk about JT. JT's on a different gear. So, we see a lot of players with a lot of speed, which is why it's important that on the power play, teams need to be careful.
No, most definitely. And I mean, one of the shorthanded goals was scored by Ilya Mikheyev, who I'm convinced is the fastest straight line skater in the NHL today.
Well, he's one of the fastest Leafs, that's for sure. He makes teams look slow. He definitely
really
does that. The Montreal Canadiens, they were up against Giroux, who went from Philly to Florida. And of course, their defenseman they traded played his first game for Florida against Montreal.
Yeah, it was important to note also Spencer Knight came up with 28 saves, so that's good. Claude Giroux had 2 assists in his first games. Huberdeau also had 2 assists. Now, on the other side of the coin there, Jake Allen had to make 38 saves for Montreal, who are currently 17, 37, and 10, and have lost 4 of their last 5 games. I think with the Washington Capitals, if they get a tie or a win, Montreal will be mathematically eliminated from the playoffs.
The first team to have that happen.
Yeah, which is surprising. Well, no, not really, but surprising in that they went to the Stanley Cup Finals last year, and this is
not really. No. Well, not really.
Trying to give them some credit here.
No, you know what it is? It's obvious and it's subtle. It's both. I guess if you lose a goaltender who many thought was the main reason why they made it to the final, the Stanley Cup last year, you lose him, and then you lose your stud of a defenseman. And then on top of that, you have some injuries up front. The National Hockey League is a very competitive league. The difference between a top team and a bottom team, yeah, it probably could be a fair bit. You could notice what the difference is. But not really when it comes to a team that that plays above its weight, which Montreal did last year in the playoffs, when they lose some players, the lightning in the bottle kind of disappears.
This is very true. I mean, they're currently tied for dead last at 44 points with Arizona. So, it's unfortunate that they're currently in this position, but again, like you mentioned, Frank, not entirely unsurprising, just based on the fact that they
They
are
get
at.
they get to draft. They get the lottery. They're going to end up with the best odds if they continue on this pace or lack of it, depending how you define it. They could end up picking first overall, and it's a pretty good draft. The draft really that'll be really a lot of fun. Will be the one next year. They're talking next year's is going to be. If you got a first round draft pick, you're laughing. You're in great shape. It's the reason why the Leafs, Kyle Dubas was very, 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 very reticent in giving away his first round draft pick for next year. The 20, it's going to be one of the best drafts in a while. They're saying.
Oh, as long as we keep having these best drafts in a while every 7 years or so, then as soon as we lose a generational player to a UFA contract, which we can't afford, we can pick up the next superstar in waiting. Yeah, like in 2 years.
2 years.
Like in 2 years.
Like in 2 years. Of course, this is from a Leaf perspective. Then we've got the Senators, who constantly, repeatedly show that they got it in them to be a really good team. Not often enough, but they do.
I've said it before. I'll say it again. They are really fun to watch. Ennis, White, and Brown got goals 3 minutes and 15 seconds apart for Ottawa to in the third period for them to come out on top 5-2. It wasn't just a win. It was a convincing win. These guys, again, I keep saying it, they're fun to watch. They move the puck well. They're not afraid to hit. Kachuk is a constant pain in the keister who's always fun to watch. But yeah, no, Kyle Corner scored his 40th goal of the season for the Jets. And they've won 4 out of 5. So this isn't, it's not entirely unexpected, but every once in a while you're going to have a loss hung on you. And this is the one that got away from them.
Yeah. We've got, let's look at the Oilers, and they played the Sharks, and we know that right now the Oilers are in a playoff spot. They won this game. They've been playing really well. And, the Alberta teams are doing well, and Vancouver. I like the idea that we'll have a few Canadian teams in the playoffs and that look like they have a chance. Calgary is probably the best chance to go for the Cup in Canada.
Oh, most definitely. It's nice to see that we're not languishing and that, it's not going to be a year where there's no Canadian teams in the playoffs whatsoever. That's a bit of relief. I mean, we know that Toronto's probably going to end up playing Boston. Let's be honest here. That's the way things usually shake out.
Right now, that's the way it looks. Yeah, now it's that way. But, we still don't know. There's still a few games left, but I get what you're saying. It would be I think this is probably a team that the Leafs have right now that could probably play better against Boston. And the reason I say it is simple: goaltending. I'm really not sold on the Bruins having that their goaltending tandem is a good tandem. You can't really pick between either, right? But the point is that I don't think they're as strong as the other two goaltenders in Florida.
Now, I do appreciate the fact that Brassard making his debut got a goal. Kyler Yamamoto got his 7th goal in 8 games, and Draisaitl also had a pair. So there's your scoring punch right there. Good to see Kane play his old team. There's a little bit of snarl there, but not a whole lot of bite. But it's nice to see them all get along, as it were. The really cute part was actually Ben Stelter, who's a young kid fighting cancer, was brought along
the
for
5-year-old.
Which was great to see. Him doing the press conference with Zach Hyman was a bit of a treat.
My goodness, he was cheeky in more senses. He was such a cute guy, and them asking him questions. You forget, being 5 and to be willing to talk, to have all those reporters. If you've never seen what a press conference looks like, it's intimidating. And I can't imagine how intimidating it is to a young boy who's 5. And, he doesn't go to games all the time. And it was fantastic and great and wonderful that, the best player in the world, we can argue about Connor David being that, but at this moment, let's just say the kid's favorite player is the best player in the world, and he had a chance to skate with him on the ice. Connor McDavid, paid him a lot of attention, and the kid, was just great to see stuff like that. We see a lot of ugly stuff in the world, Aaron. We need to see more of that stuff. Where
Definitely.
empathy enters into the equation more than the other version of humanity.
Yeah, something like that is always heartening to see. So good on the Oilers for honoring Stelter. Good on him for being so composed behind the microphone as well.
Halak used to be with Montreal, playing for the Canucks now. He helped them beat the Avalanche, for goodness sake.
Yeah, this was a bit of a surprise. Normally, because the Avs normally dominate everybody that they play against. But Brock Besser and JT Miller scored about 2 minutes apart early in the third period, and Yaroslav Halak stopped 32 shots in getting the win there. So he took advantage of a turnover early in the Besser. Sorry, he took advantage of a turnover early in the third period, and then Miller knocked in a rebound moments later. So the icing was put on the cake by Bo Skorvat. So that was nice to see.
Boudreau and the Canucks went to Boudreau's old team, the Wild, and didn't turn out well for Boudreau. It wasn't a good homecoming.
No, unfortunately. It was Eriksson Ek who put the dagger home. So, there it is. In this case, yeah, I guess you could say that. Bruce said he thought it was a really good point that they earned. They're now 23-11-7. Since Boudreau was hired on December 5th, which is good. That puts them on the right track. Kirill Kaprizov continues to be just an absolute treat to watch.
He's a thrill, isn't he?
Oh, he's Kirill the Thrill is just fantastic. So Thatcher Demko had 33 saves for the Canucks.
Oh, did you see the goal he got beat on?
Oh, yeah. But, it's going to happen to you every once in a while.
Well, I don't blame him for it. That's just how good a move it was. I mean, when you got a 220-pound guy like a fish on the ice, right? And you got a guy that can dip and doodle I think we've said enough about the guy. The guy's fantastic. They should trade him to the Leafs. Skating announcer, let's go to figure skating. Removed from a broadcast for calling an ex-skater. Well, this is a family show, so we won't use the word because, on a hot mic moment.
Yeah, they were discussing three-time Olympic medalist Megan Duhamel, and they thought that they were off air, but unfortunately their microphones were still hot. Simon Reed and Nikki Slater were working on the ISU's YouTube feed, so they were discussing her and saying, well, we didn't even discuss her by name. We didn't even mention her as one of the coaches, but yeah, she's from Canada. And the next morning, the ISU said, well, following the pair's short program at the ISU World Figure Skating Championships, an open mic picked up a disrespectful comment made by the two commentators working on the international signal. There's no place for harassing and abusive language or remarks and behavior in sport and our society. Now, Duhamel has tweeted that she received personal apologies from both Reed and Jan Dijkema. I'm not sure where the animosity really towards her comes from. So, other than the fact that she's opinionated and she tweets a lot, I didn't understand it.
That word is a convoluted word today, because you can use that same word again, and I'm not saying this was a compliment, but I'm just, what I'm getting at, right? Because the words when you refer to a female dog that's pregnant, right? It's a term you use in that sense. It's not meant as an ugly word, but in there are ways it's used that it's ugly, and in other ways it's used as almost a suggestion that a person needs to be like that. And so maybe the fact that she isn't that, but is someone who stands up for herself, attracts that kind of word, because that's what happens all the time. We've seen it in politics. We've seen it in different situations where strong women are referred to in that way. So that's what I mean when I say even that can be a compliment, because that's kind of them doing their job as people, right? Proving that they belong. And I'm not afraid of you calling me that, because that's when I'm proud of women the most, is when they play that role in the sense of ensuring people understand that women can be it too. Because a lot of times the biggest problem that women are strapped with is people don't take them seriously or think they're tough enough. And when they are, they're called that. We've seen it so many times.
Well, Megan did actually post on her Twitter that she received personal apologies from the ISU and from the commentator in question. So she's happy with that. Can we all just move on?
Okay,
So,
I'll take your
good
hint.
on her.
Okay, the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays traded Randall Grichuk. We talked just a few shows ago about the Jays needing some left-handed bats, so they brought one in to Pio Pinto. Pretty good guy. Long
Yep.
white locks.
Yeah, so they brought him in. The good news is that they're actually saving about $7.5 million as well. Tapia makes approximately 1.25 million, I think, to Randall Grichuk's 9.3. So there's a bit of a savings there. Tapia is also coming off one of his best defensive campaigns with 6 home runs and 50 ribbies while batting .273. So he's a solid defensive presence in the field. Hopefully they'll be able to get him some reps over spring training.
Yeah, this is one of those situations where they offloaded a contract. Not that the player doesn't deserve that contract, but that player's. I think this is a redundancy trade. That the Jays are trading a redundant contract for a smaller one that fits better into their needs as opposed to, how much they pay him.
So now the other. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there, Frank. But the other thing we have coming in is Adrian Pinto, who's a 19-year-old prospect from Venezuela who's recorded 3 homers and 27 ribbies in the 2021 Dominican Summer League.
So. Yeah, and that should be an interesting pickup as well.
Yeah.
So they're going with a little more youth and future, I guess. Tell me about this insider that's talking about maybe the Jays have an advantage this year. What's that about?
Oh, yeah, this was rather amusing. Jeff Passan, who writes for ESPN, is considered an MLB insider by some. He's saying that there are teams who have expressed concerns that the Blue Jays may enjoy an unfair advantage due to governmental policies concerning vaccinated players at the border. Now, it didn't seem to be an issue for a lot of teams when the Blue Jays were playing in Buffalo or in Dunedin or other stadiums that weren't their home. But now that the Blue Jays have been allowed to go home, all of a sudden it's considered competitive imbalance because players will not get paid and are put on a restricted list for this sort of thing. I don't want to jab the point home too hard, but there is an easy way to fix this
What's your point?
Competitive disadvantage.
What's your point?
The temptation is to really stick it to them with this sort of thing, but 2 or 3 times is going a little far.
Yeah, keep needling the other team. Go ahead.
But yeah, there you have it. I mean, these unvaccinated players are going to be placed on a restricted list when they visit Toronto. They won't be able to take the field. They'll be confined to the hotel. They're not paid or credited for service time, which counts towards bonuses and other sort of things. Now,
so if you don't want to be vexed, get vaxxed. Is that
exactly. I'm sorry, we're having too much fun with this.
No, but you know what? It is what it is, and you set it up beautifully. That the Jays suffered for years, a couple of years, with not being able to play at home, and now they are, and now the rules at the border are biting the other team in the butt. The only thing is, in the case of the Jays, when they were having problems, they were the only team having a problem, right?
Yeah.
When it was now it's every other team is having a problem. So of course the complaints are going to be a little more wider and deeper, Aaron. So that just goes with the territory based on the situation.
Well, here's the thing. Trevor Story almost lost out on a $140 million payday with the Boston Red Sox as well because he was vaccine hesitant.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, speaking of vaccine hesitant, let's go to basketball and Kyrie Irving.
There's another one for you. Yeah, New York is finally relaxing their COVID vaccine mandate. So while Kyrie couldn't play at home before, it's appearing possible that there is going to be an exemption made for New York City athletes. So that would mean that Kyrie Irving would now be able to play for home games effective immediately.
The Raptors are playing well on the road, and while they're playing, even though the last game they played was against Cleveland, they beat Cleveland, which was the team that was in front of them by a game. So now they're flat even for 6th spot, which means avoiding the play-in round. Good for the Raptors. They've been playing really well.
Most definitely, they've been clawing their way up the standings. By taking bite out of their opposition as they go. It was a rather convincing win. It was great to see. Now the Raptors are unfortunately 19-20 against teams over 500, but are actually 10-5 against the top three teams in each conference, which is an interesting position for them to be in. It definitely means that as they march towards the playoffs and as it gets closer, they are more of a threat to topple teams and perhaps even steal a game here or there that they potentially shouldn't. So
Yeah, if you're in sixth, you'll play third overall. So
yeah,
if they have good luck against that third place team, so it'll be interesting. We also, I could have segued there. They're another team that had problems because they were in Canada and they weren't playing at home either.
yeah,
So the Raptors know what it's like to be affected by the pandemic in regards to home games, just as well as the Jays did. So it's a peculiarity, of course, being in Canada, where our rules aren't necessarily the exact same of those in the U.S. Well, not the pandemic, but I guess this happened. No, this happened just about a year ago, I guess. So it was after the pandemic. Tiger Woods is officially listed in the field of Masters players. What's
yeah.
up?
This was a sorry. Go
What's up
ahead.
with that? No, just say what's up with that.
Well, he hasn't confirmed anything officially, and he's said repeatedly that his leg isn't back to full strength, but he does appear to be in the field for the Masters season. On the Masters website. So his name wasn't included in the past champions not playing section. Um,
Oh, so the assumption is that he's playing.
well, that's part of it, but also again, his face appears in the players listed playing for the like on the field in the field for the Masters.
But
So
let's add this in there as well. You know, you can like or dislike Tiger Woods, but one thing I can tell you folks is golf fans love him. And if there's a chance that he'll be there, trust me, more tickets will be sold. So, you know, uh, he's a good business proposition. Whether you want to morally judge him and all that other stuff, as far as a golfer is concerned, he is one of the best, and he's a living legend. And I don't think anyone should begrudge him that. He's made
no,
some poor choices in his life. You know, the reason he's not played for a while was a poor choice, but he got off lucky on that one.
Now
Good.
they did interview him at the Genesis Invitational tournament, and a direct quote from Tiger is, "I wish I could tell you when I'll be playing again. I want to know, but I don't. It takes time. What's frustrating is it's not at my timetable. I want to be at a certain pace, but I'm not. I've just got to keep working at it." He's
Yeah, but
also
a lot of
indicated,
people are saying he's playing a lot better than somebody who's in recovery.
well, he has said that walking a full course is still tough for him, and I don't think he's going to be able to get a medical exemption to use a cart. So, um, walking a course for a full week, especially playing playing the Masters, that could be very tough on him.
Yeah, not only could it be physically not good for him, it definitely will mean that, you know, recovering from such an injury, you know, it's going to be, you know, the repetitive walking, the constant walking. You know, just imagine, because the first thing they tell you when you go through something like this, put your feet up and stop walking around. You
Yeah.
know, do the therapy, but end it there. And this wouldn't be therapeutic. Not a week of walking around golf courses and then planning yourself. Let's take a look at soccer in Canada, football in Canada, men's soccer. The Canadian soccer team played last night. I watched the game front to back. Wasn't impressed with the red card, or at least the yellow card that led to a red card. Again, diving is something in soccer that they accept, and it's disgusting to see that kind of stuff. But what's worse is to be knowing that as a possibility and doing what he did. Hayes did. He shouldn't have done that.
He certainly didn't help his case. I mean, he'd already had a yellow for a stiff tackle a few minutes
Yeah,
before that.
they got
So
a little bit lucky on that because he did have his
yeah,
cleats up.
yeah. But to it wasn't even that he threw his shoulder; it was that he stiffened his shoulder,
Yeah,
and
he
and
gave
when
it
he
a
made
little bit of a
contact,
push. But what
yeah,
I would have done, you know, I know this sounds silly, but what he should have done and what they should do, what soccer players should do more of, and that is if you're going to have things like that happen and you know it's going to happen, What if he would have thrown a shoulder fake? What if he would have pretended he was actually going to do it and then stopped just in time so that when they see the replay, there's no body contact and the guy goes flying? Because I guarantee you, Aaron, dollars to donuts, that guy decided when he saw him walk towards him what he was going to do. And all that happened there is he helped the guy fake it, right? I would love to see stuff like that because soccer players can do that to other players really easily because they're so phony.
The problem that we run into then is the whole Ronaldo grabbing his face situation after getting hit in the knees. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Well,
Like,
and that should be something that the players should be fined. But I don't know what it is about soccer, why they feel they need that in the game because they do very little to get it out. Here at hockey, we get very upset in Canada and the US when we see guys do that. They put his name on a damn bulletin board and say he's a faker. It's a totally different attitude.
yeah, I can't play soccer. If I saw somebody do that, I'd pick them up again and give them a reason to be lying down.
Give them what for?
You know what? Hey, you want to lie down? I'll give you a reason to lie down.
Now, do you think Costa Rica will be fined for for shooting off the fireworks while the Canadian national anthem was on?
Unlikely.
Again, this is another thing, a low-class move. Does it get identified as a low-class move and need to be punished? I know it sounds kind of petty on my part, but I'm just saying.
I mean, I'd like to think that FIFA and UEFA would do the right thing, but at the same time, I have no faith that they actually will. I'd like to believe they would, but I don't think they will.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
But then what it does is it perpetuates that kind of behavior. And soccer today is talking about respect. Talking about respect.
They can talk about it all they want. I haven't seen any actions to indicate that they're taking any of that seriously. So,
So anyway, Canada has to wait to celebrate making the World Cup for the first time since 1986. Aaron, how are they going to qualify?
Well, there are actually several different options that are on the table for them. Ideally, we would have won or drawn last night in order to make sure that we'd actually clinched it. As it currently stands, we're still first on the table, which is fine. Now, Costa Rica, with their win, has managed to launch themselves into fourth place in the standings. They're 6 points behind us. Now, as you know, wins count for 3, draws are 1, and losses are 0. The top 3 teams are going to punch their ticket. So if Canada beats or draws with Jamaica, this is on Sunday, they'll be out of Costa Rica's reach.
In Toronto.
Yep, here in Toronto at BMO Field. Even if Canada loses to Jamaica, they can still qualify for Qatar if they win or draw in Panama on March 30th. So you're looking at games here in quick succession. It's going to be harder and harder to draw or win. Ideally, the best thing to do would be to try to salt it away early. Now, I mean, Jamaica, they're already mathematically eliminated and have only recorded 1 victory in their first 12 matches. They did manage to tie Canada. They held us to a scoreless draw back in October.
Right.
So if we can duplicate that, then we're in.
Yeah.
We can rest the players that we need to and whatever on the 30th. We don't necessarily have to worry about that. Ideally, I'd like to see the Canadian team win both games to have a little more momentum heading into the World Cup. But yeah,
I don't agree with you on that. I don't think it means anything.
You don't think so?
In fact, no. I think it's better for the team that they visit on. They get an opportunity to understand better, like that kind of move that got the red card last night. Yeah. That's a teachable moment for a coach, I think, and I think not going in a little hungrier would be better for Canada, I think, and maybe even going in with a little less respect from the other teams, might be a little better. But then again, I'm one of those guys that believes that teams have more success when they're able to sneak up on another team. The underdog thing is a big thing for me, but that's just me.
Now, as an aside, and just as a last sort of, as a Leafs fan, I have a certain fatalistic perspective when it comes to this sort of thing.
Uh-oh.
If Canada loses both games, that's against Jamaica and against Panama, they can still get in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Provided Costa Rica doesn't score more than 11 goals in the remaining 2 games.
There's a good chance of that.
It's entirely possible based on the competition.
I doubt they'll score 11 goals.
You never know. This is FIFA we're talking about here. This is international soccer. It's known to not necessarily be 100% above board. I wouldn't be surprised if there was an ongoing effort to sandbag the Canadian team on the way there. I'm not necessarily a conspiracy theorist, but how many teams actually want to see Canada in if Italy's out?
Well, I have to say that Canada being in, well, there's the thing that happened when the Europeans got together about Ukraine. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later. I don't want to change subject. Uh, Another piece of good news for Canada and Costa Rica especially is that Mexico and the U.S. tied, which meant rather than one team getting 3 points, both teams only received one. So both those teams left points on the board, which works towards talk as much as you like about Canada, but the real teams that Costa Rica are looking at are those two.
No, it was definitely a surprise. I don't think. I mean, I know Team USA was happy about it. I don't think the Mexican fans were. So
Well,
either way you look at it,
Mexico considers themselves a lock when it comes, kind of like Italy, kind of, sort of, because, we all know how awful it was for the Italian people to watch their team lose. But make no mistake, if Mexico's going to make it, I don't think they're going to get caught. But can you imagine if Mexico didn't make the World Cup? Because remember, it's all relative. Like Italy didn't make it in Europe. They got a couple of good soccer teams there. They got a couple, Whereas here in CONCACAF, you got two teams that dominate, and then you've got the other teams that cycle in every so often. U.S. and Mexico. So for Mexico not to make it, I think it's even a bigger disaster to their fans than it is to the Italian fans. It's just history that the Italians have to that has them crying because of the long history of success that they've had. But as far as getting in is concerned, I think Mexico's in a worse position than Italy.
well, tying Team USA, drawing against Team USA certainly didn't help them. So
No, and I think it's going to be a great. I think it's going to be a great tournament. The three teams, if it happens, Mexico, U.S. and Canada, it'll be an interesting World Cup, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how the great players that Canada has, and the best being Alphonso Davies, who's still recovering from his heart issues after getting COVID, to see how he plays in a Canadian uniform in international competition. We as hockey fans, you and I, have seen other countries come to tournaments and have individual players that play so well, and we go to ourselves, how did we let that one guy beat our team? Because we've seen that, whether it be a goaltender or an offensive threat. Like Switzerland, they've had a couple of really good players that have come to the National Hockey League in recent history, right?
yeah.
And they gave Canada fits at all the tournaments that they play at, whether it be the Olympics or World Cup. I'm looking forward to being on the other side of that equation.
I definitely am too. I'm looking at being on the other side and looking at other teams going, how do we beat these guys? I'd love to see that.
And then when they lose, it's just gonna be great. It's gonna be great to see if they can do that, because we know full well if Canada makes it into the second round, right? If they make it out of the first round, I mean, the teams that are left behind are going to be going home in shame. How could you let Canada beat you? What's the matter with you folks? It's just going to be kind of nice if because if they can do that, win that first round, there have been, if you follow the World Cup at all, there have been teams, in the U.S. is one of them. Mexico's another. These are teams that have done well in the World Cup at times, and when they have, it's always been, really, they made it this far. We saw the Americans. I think 2 World Cups ago, the distance that they went, they came very close to making it to the semis, which was, or in fact, did they? I'm trying to remember. I think they did make the semis that a couple of years ago, a couple of World Cups ago. It'd be great to see Canada in that position, and we're seeing how Canadian fans are there for soccer. They're there. They're visible everywhere across the country.
I mean, especially coming out in Hamilton, in a Commonwealth Stadium in Edmonton. My God, Edmonton. That was fantastic to see.
55K, baby. That's a lot of soccer fans in the winter. But then
Hey,
again,
nobody said we were smart.
well, no. But then it made a great finish to the game. The diving into the snow. It's something
Oh,
that'll
definitely.
always be part of the history of the Canadian, national soccer team. And let's keep in mind that the women, the reason this is so exciting for the men, because they have had very little success, right? I mean, they started out this year, I think, what is it, 93rd or 73rd, and now they're up to 35, I think, or 33
It's the
rated, right?
highest they've been in ages.
Right.
So yeah,
So,
it's
but the
absolutely fantastic.
Canadian women, just to give them a little bit of, bit of respect, they've been dominant. And by dominant, I mean always there, with a chance to win the championship. I know they've had, some difficulty, like at the Olympics and stuff. They won, it's just fantastic to see another sport that Canada is playing well in.
Indeed.
I think it's awesome. And sticking with soccer, Italy lost to North Macedonia. Chelsea has maybe a prospective owner in the wings.
There was a bid that was put out by an American family, the Ricketts family, but that bid was rejected. Bid was actually rejected earlier this afternoon. So this is almost breaking news. But Sir Mountain Broughton and Todd Bealey's bids are on the final shortlist as well. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Ricketts family also own a couple American franchises when it comes to sports and are members of the Republican National Committee's Finance Board. So there's that to be considered as well.
Good for them.
Yeah.
I'm not kowtowing to anything here, but where's the beef when it comes to Canada and Britain?
Ever since Britain has left the EU, there's been an ongoing debate, particularly over hormone-treated Canadian beef as versus UK beef. The problem that we're looking at here is that under the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, or CETA, that Canada negotiated with the European Union, Britain said, well, we're not going to follow that anymore. We're not going to allow Canadian beef in. So, the negotiations are unfortunately at loggerheads over this sort of thing. Now, they had already negotiated an interim trade agreement to replace CETA, but that, unfortunately, the talks appear to have been stalled on getting all of that resolved.
Staying in Canada, how the Liberal NDP agreement will work and what it might mean for Canadians, the one that they've made to keep the Trudeau government in power.
Yeah. Now, and again, this isn't a coalition government, as a lot of people are fond of calling it, mainly because, and this is how a coalition government works, the NDP are not receiving cabinet posts in the Liberal government. This is what's called a supply and confidence agreement. They have agreed to work together on key policy areas and situations where both parties want the same medium-term outcome while avoiding an ongoing election call. Basically, what they're looking to do is they're looking to get a new dental care program in place. This is a program that would be restricted to families earning less than $90,000 with no copay requirements for any families that in total earn less than $70,000 a year. A universal national pharmacare program, a commitment to additional ongoing investments to shore up provincial health care by hiring more doctors, nurses, and mental health supporters, as well as a Safe Long-Term Care Act to address the funding and policy shortcomings exposed by the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly amongst assisted living facilities and long-term care facilities for the elderly. They're also looking at an Early Learning and Child Care Act to ensure child care agreements struck between the federal and provincial governments get secure long-term federal funding. This is part of the $10 a day health care. They're also looking at a $500 top-up to the Canadian Housing Benefit and a home buyer's Bill of Rights. There's also a commitment to phasing out federal government support for oil and gas starting in late 2022 and finding a new way to further accelerate the trajectory to a net zero economy by 2050, as well as a clean jobs training center for oil and gas workers to re-educate themselves to move away from fossil fuels. Here's one that I think you might appreciate, Frank. It's a pledge to implement legislation to remove scabs from being hired if there are labor disputes. This is as a way to sort of help protect unions, as well as this won't apply to you anymore, but 10 days of paid sick leave for Canadians every year. This is going to go a long way towards
I had
restoring
them
what some of
it
the
was part
provinces
of
have
my
cut.
contract, and I didn't get them.
So this is something that's going to be enshrined in federal legislation, which is what the NDP and Liberals are working for.
I was guilted into not taking them.
Oh
So
goodness.
it's not just a question of people having rights. It's having the rights actually exercised. It's
Mhm.
difficult. Now, all those things you mentioned, I don't want to veer too far into that subject and go back at the beginning of what you were talking about. All those issues that you talked about, with helping with healthcare, pharma, daycare, those are all liberal things that they talked about, and they before the election were kind of for them. So for the people who think that the NDP are actually, this is a socialist trend in the Liberal Party, these are all issues the Liberal Party talked about. All that's happening now is that the NDP at the beginning, rather than during being in power, they're basically saying, look, you've got our support if you work on these right now. And the difference that you talked to about how this type of government works, they're just basically saying, here are the bars we want you to go over, and we'll let you be in power for a while, as opposed to being given positions so that as issues come up, the NDP has a comment on that. So what you're seeing here, it's a case of the Liberal Party governing how they wish, starting with issues that they already agreed with, that now the NDP is saying, holding their hand to the fire and saying, you're going to give us this stuff that you talked about. So as far as I'm concerned, um, this is, people talk about, well, this isn't fair. They're not giving people the government that they voted for. I disagree, because quite frankly, I think people voted for the NDP too. And what you're doing is you're bringing more voters into the government. And that's what this does. To look at it any other way is, if you're not the one being invited in, I can see, because just the crowd outside government's getting smaller. That's what this is. It's being said one way, but really what it is the group outside government is smaller today than it was before this act.
Yeah, there was a significantly larger group of people that voted for parties on the left than voted for Maxime Bernier and his PPC and the CPC party.
Yeah,
Um,
and when you talk about left, I mean, well, I get it. I get it. People think social programs are free gifts. I think it's an umbrella. I think it's a safety net, and there should be somewhat a safety net and an umbrella. Uh, I'm one of those people that believes when I pay insurance, I'm not buying insurance to protect me from the rain when the sun is out. I want the umbrella when it's raining.
yeah.
And that's what this is all about. The Liberal Party having their hand held to the fire and being told by the NDP, we're more than glad to help you, but give us these basic things that we think are really important. And I guarantee you, Aaron, North America, not just Canada, wants those things. They're the same things that the Democrats in the US are talking about, especially childcare, especially because of, the pandemic. Most of the people who've lost or have to give up their jobs have been women, because either the husband or the wife has to stay home. And of course, sexism being what it is, the women have to stay home and take care of the kids because, they have the mothering gene, I guess. I don't know. But that's why this is important. It helps make employment, and the women working that can go to work because they can leave their kids at home, they're paying tax dollars, most of them anyway.
Yeah.
So it's just makes it's common sense, but sometimes you say socialist, and all of a sudden people start seeing red.
Well, I mean, the good thing is that they're actually committing to hiring more doctors and nurses, which is going to help a great deal in dealing with an absolutely massive surgical backlog that we're currently looking at now.
Well, yeah.
Um,
A good segue is that story I sent to you that maybe we should talk about, is the $2 billion the federal government today is spreading out among all the provinces to help. We've talked about this on the show. My feelings about this. This is right down my power alley when it comes to the pandemic. My biggest concern with the pandemic is that, like we always say, it's about the healthcare system and how it's dealing with the pandemic. Well, when
mhm.
you've got to put the whole power of the healthcare system just on the pandemic, a lot of other things get ignored. There's finally an acknowledgement about this. In fact, our producer Eduardo is one of those people that has had operations in the past couple of years being delayed 2 to 4 years. And so now the federal government, its infinite wisdom, has decided to give the provinces $2 billion, spread it out to them so they can fast track the operations that people are waiting to have because our system couldn't handle the pandemic. This is the side issue with the pandemic that people don't understand, I think, and they should be made to understand that.
Now, I don't want to sound like too much of a doubter here, but we all know how $4.6 billion from the federal government disappeared earlier last year when it came to the pandemic and when given to the Ford government. There is no guarantee that any Ontarians will see any of this money. However, I would like to think that with an election coming up, Doug Ford will do the right thing and make sure that our healthcare system gets the dollars that it needs to get people the procedures that they need as well.
Well, there's support in what you're saying, because in the recent time, he has cut a lot of things in the budget that have to do with healthcare. So, but then that can become election platforms, and that can be something people can talk about when it comes to the election. I'll leave them to figure that out, and the people we have on our open forum show on Fridays at 4 p.m. Oh yeah, today's Friday. Another thing that came up, and this is another one of my pet peeves. You remember at the beginning of the pandemic when we were doing the show, why doesn't Canada have something going on here? I think we're pretty smart people. I think when it comes to healthcare and doctors and scientists, I have all the faith in the world in Canadians, and why we're not doing anything. Well, something came up. Apparently, we've invented this plant-based vaccine.
This is true. Medicago and GlaxoSmithKline have actually been approved. Basically, what we're looking at here is it's a vaccine called Covafenz, which is now they've got approval from Health Canada, but there's a different story outside of Canada. Unfortunately, the World Health Organization has rejected Quebec's Medicago COVID-19 vaccine over the company's ties to big tobacco. So that's, Marlboro cigarette manufacturer Philip Morris is a shareholder in the Quebec City-based company. So, sorry, there's been some concern over that.
Yeah. Let me help you out if you had some water beside you. I've had that moment myself. Yeah, so I think the point you're trying to make, and I would also, when you have a cigarette company investing in something, right? People get nervous. They get nervous because history is something that scares people. But having said that, look into what they're doing. I mean, judge them by what, let's judge people by their actions, and even companies and organizations that we don't trust. I'm not saying believe them fully and faithfully. I'm saying just buyer beware. That's all. And if this plant-based vaccine can help people, then and you and I both know, nudge nudge, wink wink, a lot of the reason that a lot of the religious folks don't want, you don't hear this because nobody wants to talk about it, but we'll talk about it here, that what they used to create this vaccine, the tests that they used were aborted babies, and it's something that's been going on for a long time. Stem cell research is old. Well, this doesn't involve that. So, this gives an opportunity for people to say, well, I really don't like that vaccine because of that. I can take it because of this. So we can narrow it down to why people can take it. So anytime we can make progress in ensuring that a vaccine is usable and something that people emotionally can handle, people got feelings there. And you say all the time here, it doesn't matter what I say and how I say it. It matters how it's taken by the other person. So I'd like to use that theory and the suggestion that if it's plant-based and it makes people who feel the way the other vaccines were made are a reason why they're not taking it, here's an opportunity for them to get the vaccine, which is for their good health, and set aside their concerns.
Yeah, there is something I would like to address as well. The common claim that aborted baby cells are used in this is something that has been actually debunked. the fetal stem cell lines that they're using are descended from cells taken from abortions in the 70s and 80s. They're not going to abortion clinics now and going through the backs to fish dead babies out of dumpsters to use. These are cell cultures that have been used and grown in laboratories for the past 40 to 50 years. So,
and the point, Aaron, here is what I'm going to say as far as I'm concerned, because
mhm.
I'm not a pro-abortion person. I'm not that, but I'm not in a position to make a decision that affects my life in that regard because of who and what I am. I'm a senior. I'm male, and I don't really understand why I can't be made to understand. I don't care what anybody says. I do not have the understanding of what a young woman's going through in regards to making that decision. I don't agree with it, but I'm not going to make my thinking their rule. But here's what I want to say is that what you're talking about happened a long time ago. I'll buy that. But all I want to see is that whatever happens and however we look into this kind of stuff and decisions that we make, I hope people remember that everybody has a stake in this. It's not just one individual. Just because an individual gets to make the decision, I hope they understand that they affect a lot of other people with their decisions. So it is what it is. But I'm not here to. I'm trying not to
And that's
preach.
fine.
All I'm trying to say is people have feelings, right? And sometimes when they feel like their feelings are being ignored, they get really angry, and it gets into a point where we don't listen to the root issue, which is the woman that has to make that decision and has to, and this is the most important thing, has to live with it. It's not this isn't choosing between grape jelly and apple jelly. This is a tough situation, and I don't know what it's like, so I'm not going to judge. Um, so we got government doing a good job here of working things out so we don't have to have another election. It's all about choices. People make choices and decisions all the time, Aaron. And the convoy itself was criticized in Europe. The prime minister, two far right groups, a Croatian and I think a German one, they railed against the prime minister because of what he did. I take it as just being somebody on that side of the political equation equal to somebody on the same side in Canada. So that's more of the same to me. The important thing, I guess, here is we also have protesters saying they regret having gone to the rally. Tell us about one of those.
Well, there was an individual who joined the Freedom Convoy, which occupied Ottawa. Um, he lost $13,000 and his home in protesting something he never really had a stance on. Martin Joseph Engelhart from Hope, BC, said he's got nothing left. He started delivering fuel and picking up laundry for the truckers. He spent his life savings on gas and food for the occupiers. He's currently living out of his SUV because he said his landlord kicked him out over his point of view concerning the protests. I think what's more likely and more believable is the fact that he sold his business, took all of his money out, bought his vehicle, drove there and supported it, and now he's got nothing left, and he probably didn't pay rent for a couple of months, which is reasonable enough grounds to have him removed. However, Engelhart said that he never really had a stance on mandates, but felt drawn to the protest movement.
Well, that's what everybody understands. It was more than that. People were attaching certain feelings. Now, he regrets being involved in that. How do you think some of the leaders who are facing new criminal charges feel about?
I can only think that those individuals feel perfectly justified in their fight against this tyrannical and corrupt government that is seeking to poison the populace in their minds. No, there are more charges that are being brought against them, so it is what it is. Pat King is going back. He's got an additional 10 charges against him. It's a cluster.
Well, we all have rights, and I just wish that people would remember that we all have rights. It's not just me. We have rights. Hey, Aaron, thanks. This was awesome.
I appreciate it, Frank. Thank you.
For Aaron William Freeland, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Candid Frank Live and other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Ciao for now.